The 6th ANC Policy Conference is in full swing at the Nasrec Expo Centre in Johannesburg. Peace and stability in the country, as well as social and economic transformation, are expected to lead discussions on the second day of the gathering. Newzroom Afrika's Ayanda Nyathi is standing by to give us a preview of not only what to expect today, Ayanda, but perhaps let's recap on some of the main points coming out yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. We're still relatively here at the Nasrec Expo Centre as the ANC's 6th National Policy Conference enters officially day 2. Much of today's proceedings, by the way, will be in the form of a closed session, but we expect those 8 commissions that involves what you mentioned, peace and stability, economic and social transformation, conversations around digitization and what the ANC calls the balance of forces. All of that are likely to evolve in the form, we hope, of robust debate behind closed doors. Thereafter, the subcommittee chairs will intermittently throughout the course of the day give us media briefings to give us a sense of what they as chairpersons were able to table to those committees, what the delegates discussed, and eventually what the delegates eventually adopted. But yesterday, of course, opened with President Cyril Ramaphosa's welcoming address, which, might I add, was 2 hours late. I'm only saying that because we were affected by that in some ways or the other. But the president having to touch on many issues that are obviously plaguing the country, but perhaps what stands out from what he had to say was that unequivocal statement that the ANC is arguably at its weakest ever since the dawn of democracy. So many challenges facing the party. He said that should hopefully galvanize delegates here to take some of those policy discussions quite seriously. As of this morning, we've been able to spot 2 ANC NEC members, and I'm emphasizing that because of just how relatively quiet it's been so far. Lindiwe Zulu has passed. She, of course, is also the Social Development Minister. But Aaron Motsoaledi has also walked past me a short while ago, and I'm only mentioning him because of what the country arguably is grappling with most as of the Saturday morning. That really heinous crime that took place in West Village in Krugersdorp, where we now know 67 people have been arrested after the gang rape of 8 women. One of those women, we're told, a 19-year-old, raped 10 men in that one incident. And that's obviously baffled so many in this country about how a crime like that can take place for so long without anybody picking it up, not even any kind of tip-off. And where Aaron Motsoaledi enters here is that part of the kind of discussions he'll be having is around migration in this country. And this is relevant because of the details that we got around this crime from the police minister yesterday, who said the individuals, the suspects who had been apprehended by yesterday morning were in fact foreign nationals. They admitted as much. When he visited Krugersdorp, the community there said they're under siege. Those are the words they used, by mostly Basotho nationals. And all of this obviously has us in a space where we need to have a conversation around policing in this country, but also around migration. In fact, under peace and stability, I've got the ANC's policy documents here in front of me. Part of the sub-headlines that they discuss are around transnational organized crime. And take a listen to what the ANC says about that as a chopper, it seems, flies above my head. This is what they're saying. They say the impact of transnational crime, that's essentially crime that happens through our borders, cuts across priorities of government and renders the country unsafe. The ANC says the country is also unsuitable for investment, it's unstable, it's degenerated social and moral fabric, and the extreme scenario, it threatens to collapse law and order. That certainly was the feeling yesterday, as many people were trying to, again, come to terms or make sense of how a crime like this can take place. But it doesn't stop there. The ANC, when it outlines some of its capacity challenges around this, says that the country needs a coherent approach to national security. The re-establishment of the National Security Council, chaired by the President, is the right approach to create the necessary leadership and coherence. Now, the National Security Council, if you cast your memory back to earlier this year when Xoli Mngambi was speaking to then Defense Minister Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, hadn't sat since President Thabo Mbeki was at the helm, now former president, of course. And that again has brought into sharp focus questions around why there's such a lack of coherence and cohesion in the different units of our law enforcement operations, as it were. So hopefully those conversations will really be sharpened today, especially in a context where we're dealing, of course, with that really, again, sobering crime, for lack of a better adjective. But part of what was also discussed, of course, is about the future of this party, which is plagued by so many problems, and where young people should be in that plan. Take a listen to what Oscar Mabuyane had to say about leadership, perhaps, and young people in the ANC.
What is factual is that South Africa has a younger population. and you need a sense of agility to respond to a couple of challenges that we have, be it in government or outside government. So it's a matter of principle. The calls that are made are calls that any ANC leader will, of course, not turn a blind eye on. Actually, the integration of younger generations into the leadership of the ANC is inevitable. It's no longer about certain people comfortable allocating positions to certain other people. It's about the reality. ANC is not static. The society is not static. It's growing. And we know out there the population is younger. We need to connect with the younger population of our country.
Oscar Mabuyane there, of course, the chair of the ANC in the Eastern Cape, trying to really drive home this idea that perhaps it's time for the organization to really take seriously policies that have always been in place, by the way, about empowering young people, even within the organization itself. Interestingly enough, those who are part of the ANC's Youth League task team have previously said that they don't want to inherit an ANC in crisis on the opposition benches. Yesterday, in my conversation with political analyst Moeletsi Mbeki, he said perhaps a bit too late to make that kind of plea. But you almost get a sense, Tutu, whilst you're here as well, that the ANC really feels itself it's at a crossroads. I mean, it was Senzo Mkhunu who's now been quoted as saying that delegates here need to sober up about what's possibly at stake. Bibi Potgieter, who is the head of one of the subcommittees whilst we're here, also touched on that in one of the briefings. Take a listen to what she has to say.
And part of that existential crisis, the way that we described it to plenary, is not so much that the movement may cease to exist, but in fact that its character may change to such an extent that it will become anti-people if we don't arrest it, or in fact it will just become such a lame duck that it becomes ineffective in making a difference in the transformation agenda in the country. And the point that we therefore made is that we've been talking, as I said, at previous conferences, that this policy conference and the national conference that we're going to at the end of the year is a make or break conference for us. In a couple of years' time, 2024, we're going for another national and provincial elections. At the last local government elections, the ANC dipped below 50% for the first time since 1994. So we cannot take for granted that it should just be business as usual. And that is the core message to policy conference, that we can either allow the organization to sink, or we need to, as members and leadership, take responsibility for making sure that we take renewal seriously, and the regional mission of the movement to be able to transform South Africa.
Ayanda Nyathi with a recap and preview of what to expect today from Nasrec. I do wonder, Ayanda, as the weather seems gloomy there, whether that will set the tone for the discussions, as much like you indicated is happening in the country today.